TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Stallion Shaking It Up, a brilliant Grade 1 winning 3-year-old, new for 2015 and available on Spendthrift's Share the Upside program.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown alongside Joel Cunningham. I'm John Siegel. All right, Joel, let's jump right in there. First of all, congratulations on your pick there at Santa Anita. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I'm sorry about your Seahawks.
Nice shirt.
Thank you very much.
You're rubbing it in a little bit.
Just a little bit, but I'm glad to see you came on over to the right side. You know, you got the blue to match the red. You know, it kind of says Patriots.
Let's see if I can coach these picks a little better than Pete Carroll did last Sunday. How about that?
All right, let's run right into this recap then. Let's talk about the Sam F. Davis. You know, you talked about Ocean Knight last week. You thought this was a colt that you thought had a big chance in this race. He's got the connections. He's got the looks. What did you think of his performance?
Well, you had to be pretty impressed with the way he did it. You know, I mean, the Byron speed figure was only a 93 in the Sam Davis, which matched his debut win at Aqueduct. I don't think he beat anything at Aqueduct when he won, but he still won fast. I mean, anytime you can break your maiden and you're a two-turn colt, he's a big, hardy colt like Curlin, certainly, you know, looks like he's a definite two-turn type horse. If you can break your maiden sprinting with a 93 buyer, you have to be impressed with that alone. But to go first time around 2 turns against stakes quality horses over a track like Tampa that can be very tricky, the footing there, I mean, just frankly, a lot of horses don't like that. He obviously didn't mind it at all. You have to be at least impressed with what he was able to overcome. We'll look at the stretch run here. I mean, there's a colt that was, again, drew outside and was 3 to 4 wide most of the way around there. It doesn't affect you on the straightaways, but on the turns, you lose ground. But you see him here kicking it in. This horse here on the lead, we talked about him. It's the son of Precious Kitten and Tappet, well-bred colt, finally ran a big race. But you look at the fractions here. I mean, those are very easy fractions for that colt to be, you know, loose on the lead, and so you have to give Ocean Knight a lot of credit for running him down late in the stretch. Another 93 buyer, again, isn't going to impress you if you're reading it on paper. But for anybody that saw this race, you'd be impressed with this colt and his potential and his upside. I think the Tampa Bay Derby is going to tell the story if they run him there about Ocean Knight. I think he could really take a big step up and impress people, maybe jump into people's eyes at that point.
All right, well, you say you got to, you know, judge him off of this performance. After seeing that, did he do enough to get on the TCI top 10?
He did because of his potential. You know, I think he's bred to handle classic distance. He certainly looks the type. He overcame some trouble there. I mean, he's done everything right so far. I give these other horses, again, I like to stick with our initial evaluation. You know, we put a lot of time and effort into putting a top 10 together. And unless a horse really, you know, surprises me or another horse, you know, disappoints significantly, I'm not going to try to move the list around too much. So on the basis that we had Calculator, a horse that we talked about could have some fragility issues, the fact that he got hurt, we have to move him off the list. I'm just going to move everybody up, and we'll put Ocean Knight at 10, make it very simple, and we'll see if these evaluations, you know, change or you know, if I made the right call at first glimpse on this top 10.
All right, well, let's talk about, you know, I see Texas Red stays in there at number 2, and it leads the question, you know, Lord Nelson, a horse that defeated him at Santa Anita, he doesn't make the list. Tell me why.
You know, I remember one of the first Breeders' Cup Classics that I really loved was when Cat Thief won at Gulfstream going 1.25 miles. Then they tried to run him back in the Malibu against only straight 3-year-olds, and he lost. Because he's not a 7-furlong horse. And Texas Red isn't a 7-furlong horse either. He's a classic type colt, and I really applaud Texas Red's performance here. He saved all the ground. He fired in the stretch. I didn't even think the pace was all that nuts compared to what it could have been. I thought it was pretty realistic. I did not think Lord Nelson got the best of trips. You know, he didn't look as comfortable in his trip, but he kicks it in here, and he has a better turn of foot around one turn. He's a sprinter. He's a lick type horse. And I think he likes 7 furlongs. I think that's what Lord Nelson wants to do. You know, one time last year, I thought he could be a Breeders' Cup juvenile colt. He proved to me in the front runner he was not that. He came back in the Jockey Club, Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes. I didn't like the way he ran there. Bob said he got shuffled back. Frankly, I think he's a one-turn colt. And so he was doing what he wanted to do, and he's a quality colt. That's why he beat Texas Red. But look how good Texas Red ran. Got his ears up there. That was a very good setup for him for the Risen Star. Again, I'm keeping Texas Red at number 2. I was very impressed with his performance.
You know, I know he's a lot bigger than a Fleet Alex, but when you see him going down the stretch, man, doesn't he remind you of his sire?
He's a finisher, John. I mean, Fleet Alex is one of my favorites in recent memory. I mean, maybe of all time. I mean, here's a horse that just could finish the last 3/8 of a mile of a race as impressively as any horse I remember. And the move that he would make, you know, was so quick twitch and explosive. He certainly has that. He's bigger, So his stride isn't quite as quick twitch as his sire, but he definitely has that explosion and stretch. Impressive comeback 3-year-old debut for Texas Red, even in defeat. I don't care. That was a great race for him, and I think you're going to see a good performance moving forward.
All right, well, let's move into this weekend's races. We got the Withers and the Robert Lewis. Let's start off with the Withers. There's a horse in here, El Kabir. He's on a hot streak right now. He's won 2 races in a row, and one of those was at Aqueduct. You think that gives him a leg up on the competition?
It does. I mean, he won on the inner track there at, mile middle distance, mile 70. Here's another middle distance you would classify. I mean, he already showed the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes that mile and 16ths within his scope. So the fact that he drew outside of a field here that, again, is a unproven type field, and there's some talent on the inside, a couple blame colts. You have March, and then Far From Over from the Pletcher barn. I think, a horse that probably has some upside for Black Rock Thoroughbreds. But, quite frankly, you look at this group, and it's very similar to the one that he beat last time out in the Jerome. So I expect, especially from the outside post, he'll be able to dictate his trip, stalk if he has to, or make the lead. We know he has that ability to do that, and I think a mile and 16th with his current form, he'll win this race, and he'll keep racking up those Derby points. But what are we going to learn about him that's going to give us confidence? He can excel as the distances go further. Mile and 1/8 in the Wood Memorial is something he'll have to face if he stays in the New York circuit. Then obviously the classic distances in the spring. That's what's important.
Right.
Everything he's doing right now in the winter isn't important. What is important is how they project and what they're going to do in the spring.
All right, let's go out to California then. Let's talk about the Robert Lewis. We have a rematch here between Firing Line and Dortmund, 2 horses that are on the TCI top 10. It was a blanket finish last time, super close between 3 horses. Tell me, who do you think's got the edge this weekend?
I think you have to like Dortmund from an ability standpoint, but Firing Line's a colt I think is very interesting. I mean, you want to talk about a horse making his first start around 2 turns in a grade 1, and to have that in-between trip down the stretch to where he showed some moments of greenness. I mean, you can make a real excuse for him in there and say, okay, now with that experience under his belt, he can only improve now in a second start, more development, that experience under his belt. I mean, I could certainly see him take a step forward with Gary Stevens here, and he's getting 5 pounds from Dortmund, which I don't think is going to be a huge difference. Dortmund's a big colt. I think he can carry the weight. At Santa Anita, it's tough for stretch runners to make an impact. So if Firing Line's able to stalk the pace and have a tactical edge over Dortmund, that could be enough to make him have some sort of advantage in here. I personally like Dortmund because I think he's a little better of a colt at this point, but I expect a great stretch run between these colts, and I think we're going to learn a lot. I mean, that TCI top 10, it could change depending on the performance of those 2 in here. And watch out for Tizcano. I mean, here's a colt that they thought a lot of. He's finally going 2 turns. He's by Tiz now. He's having Alcibiades winner. I mean, isn't he bred to go 2 turns? And he drew the rail. I think they have to go with him. There's not a lot of speed in the race. If he makes an easy lead and he improves around 2 turns, watch out at a big price for him as well. I don't think it's all Firing Line and Dortmund. Even on the stretch, most people expect that to be the case.
All right, thank you, Joel, and thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll recap the Withers and the Robert Lewis.